And that's going to be on YouTube automatically.
Yeah, it's going to stream. And feel free to hide your camera if you'd like. And turn that off.
Out a little bit, I'm sorry.
So this is being live streamed. I'll try to turn this around so you can see some of the people who are here. There's a few others, but that'll at least get us going. Okay, let me make sure I got everything. I think we are live streaming. That records it. Anything else? I think that's it.
So we can go.
I think we can go.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll skip around a little bit, but not much. Welcome to the Complete Streets Advisory Committee meeting for November. We are not going to review minutes because the minutes are recorded, and if you want to look at what happened, the recordings are available, so we don't have to go through the ritual of accepting minutes. Presuming everybody's okay with the recording. That's a good thing. So welcome, and we can start off with a public comment. We have a public comment.
Round of introductions.
Oh, let's go. Yeah, we can go around for introductions. John, you want to start?
John Rose Coleman, I've been on this for many years. I'm only involved with building the rail trail networking. But for long distance bicycle tour.
You forgot to say incoming chair.
Let's
Okay.
go. Want to go this way? Yeah, Ellie.
Hi, I'm Ellen Bernstein. I'm here as a guest. I'm the city's environmental specialist. We're going to talk about bike share legislation.
I'm Julie Noble, the sustainability coordinator for the city, also here as a guest.
Paul Stankus, new member to the committee.
Audit board, been on the committee for a while, former chair of RCAL and Public Works Group.
Bob Dennison, I'm the current chair of the committee. About to hand it over to John.
Brian Slack, Ulster County Transportation Council and coordinator of traffic safety for Ulster County.
Kristen Wilson, I'm with ROPCO and I've been on this committee for a long time.
Officially now as not a staff person.
Yeah, former city staff member and newly on the committee, I guess, as a voting member.
Yeah. Emily Flynn, Director of Health and Wellness for the City of Kingston. Yeah, that's all. She, her pronouns. All right.
Okay, public comment. If
Yeah.
we actually have one, it's very exciting.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ella Condrat. And I look like I'm on the phone. This is actually how I'm doing the audio. My microphone's not working. I just wanted to, well, first of all, I don't know if I'm going to be able to hear your answers that well, so I might just need to ask for that things to be written down at a later date because the sound isn't working that great for me. Maybe I could just come in person another time. So my main question is really just about Henry Street and Franklin Street. And I want to know why there were no bike lanes put into either of those streets. And I mean, I've read the website, but I just would like to hear your take and your understanding on why there's 7 lanes for cars and no lanes for bikes.
So I was not involved in the design. That's really a question for John Schulteis, the city engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Which
yeah, I emailed him, but I haven't heard back.
Okay. Well, what we'll do is we can certainly forward a comment to him and ask your question on behalf of the council. I don't really know enough detail about the project to explain why there wasn't. Are you looking for a bike lane? Is that what your request is?
Yeah, I'm asking about bike lanes, and I'm also asking about I'm just also asking kind of the committee members how they feel, how each person feels about there not being bike lanes, and is that in line with what the committee is trying to do or not? And if so, if it's not in line, then, you know, how could that be addressed?
Well, our, you know,
My
our,
question.
yeah, if you look at our website, which I haven't looked at in a year probably, you know, our purpose is to encourage the development of the street system in the city to be available to all users. So that's pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, truck drivers, everybody. So it's,
Mhm.
so it is certainly consistent with our mission to make sure that everybody has access to the street system. So yes, it is consistent with that. However, I
Yeah.
don't, you know, I don't know enough details about the project to know if the bike lane is possible there. And, you know, part of the issues with bike lanes gets some standard widths and how wide it has to be and travel lane,
Mhm.
parking, and, you know, it's a design decision that is typically made by the recommendation is made by the designers, given the physical condition. Christian might know more. Do you want to know more?
Yeah, I can give some insight. I was manager on Henry Street and Franklin for a short period of time when I worked for the city of Kingston. And just to preface, I started out my work as a bike lane advocate, so just wanted you to know that. On Franklin Street, I think that there is not so with bike lanes, with any street project, there's a competition between sidewalks, sidewalks, street trees, parking, the travel lane and the bike lane. And so all of that has to fit within the city's right of way, you know, within the width of the street. And so on Franklin, I think it came down to, there were a number of community meetings and priorities were set for street trees, and also parking. Because there are a number of apartments on that street that don't have off street parking, and so there is a need for resident parking on that street. So I think that was part of the decision.
Right.
Also, Franklin is I think there was some consideration in the final design to make it like a bicycle boulevard. So where instead of a bike lane, you're really just calming traffic. And I think some of that ended up in the final design. And then
yeah, I mean, I haven't seen specifics. I know I saw it's 11 feet wide lanes, which is wider than, you know, 10-foot NACDO default lanes. So, you know, I think the wider lanes are going to encourage faster traffic, especially if it's wide, flat, straight, you know, all those things are going to encourage faster traffic. Now that it's you know, there's parking on one side of the street has been taken off, so now cars can go more quickly down the road, which I think makes it less safe for people, you know, bicyclists in the street. So, you know, things like that. I don't know if a one-way was ever considered, you know, in order to make so that there would be kind of room for everything. So these are just questions I have. I don't know if there's an answer right now.
yeah, I mean, for Franklin, there isn't an answer anymore because it's been designed and it's being built. So
yeah, I know it's like I know it's
But
kind of late in the game, but
I would highly encourage advocacy and paying attention to like the next project in Flatbush, paying attention to that and where it is at design, because that's the thing is like once a project is, I mean, I think even on Henry, it's a little bit late, right? So design decisions have been made.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and also my question is, so are these decisions about bike lanes being primarily made then by the residents of the street that the bike lane's being built on? Or is that the main input that's being used, or is it kind of more like, you know, what the city wants as a bike network?
I think it's a combination of many things, and we're in the middle of creating a head bike master plan that will help set priorities, but there's a public outreach process, which usually involves 3 to 4 meetings of public outreach to help, usually at the beginning of a project, there is a list of alternatives that the city will present to the public. So that will fit within the streets right of way. And then the public will give feedback on that. And then based on that feedback and oftentimes based on the constraints, the construction constraints on the street,
Mm-hmm.
the city will make a decision on what the layout of the street will be.
Okay. But the ultimate decision is made by the engineer, right? Is that
Yeah.
true?
And the mayor.
Okay. And the
Yes.
mayor.
The
Engineer and the mayor.
The design engineer is not going to do anything that's going to create a dangerous situation for them. They're obligated not to. You know, they can't make crazy recommendations for a lot of reasons. But, so yeah, the design engineer plays a big role in it. So within reason. But the parameters around which it's designed are set by the stakeholders, and the design engineer then has to apply standards and engineering judgment to come up with a project that meets those parameters. So the parameters about whether there's a bike lane or not would be set during the project development stage.
Mm-hmm. So, okay.
Another
But
project.
go ahead.
Another project.
I can't really hear you super well.
Is Shrike Drive, which is an interesting one that's under design right now, where they're eliminating 2 travel lanes, putting in a bike path, bike lane, and a parking lane, which would be a big improvement on Shrike Drive. And that's under design right now, my understanding.
But yeah, just, so I'm a former city employee, but I would say that, often during the, project, design period, we didn't hear enough from the public. And I wish there was more advocates for bicycle lanes or more people giving input, but a lot of times there aren't, and there are competing priorities. There are also advocates in the community for parking or advocates in the community for their cars. So it's important that if it's something that you're passionate about, that
Yeah, totally. But I also feel like it's ultimately, I also don't think that every single time a bike lane or a street gets redone that it has to be like a new fight every single time necessarily. Like, I'm just wondering why it isn't kind of more built in. And I guess that's a question I'll look into more, but.
Well, the question is, my answer to that question is keep your eye on the bike ped master plan, which is going to cover the whole city. And that's where the parameters are set for future projects as well. That's under development. Emily gets to be the project manager. I'm sure there'll be more outreach as that goes forward, but it's an important thing to watch.
Well, and I'll also mention the zoning. So the new zoning project has a lot of street recommendations for new roads and recommendations for retrofitting the roads when it becomes appropriate. So I don't want you to get anyone's hopes up. There is not a map in the bike ped master plan that shows out a bike lane network. That's kind of not part of the bike pedestrian master plan, but there is overall values of where there should be bike infrastructure. But there is sort of those recommendations in the zoning project. So I do recommend that there's like a third and final draft coming out soonish in next month or so, I think. And that has some really interesting street design standards.
It does. It's worth a read.
Yeah.
How can someone find out timelines for community feedback on projects?
For the published.
Okay.
I think it's paying attention to gagekingston.com, so getting registered on that site, signing up for the notifications of new projects coming out, paying attention to the press releases from the city, getting on the
Social media
list, social media, paying attention to the City of Kingston website. Getting together with a group of friends to help each other pay attention. It's a lot. I mean, now that I don't work at the city, I'm like, oh, God, I gotta like keep up with this stuff.
Historically, it's very difficult to get real meaningful public participation. I mean, so they struggle with it in all public works. And so paying attention and talking about it is a good thing. They would During project development, they welcome as much as they can get, and it is difficult to get it, and it's difficult to get it from certain communities. It's a challenge to get meaningful public interaction.
And there's also.
Early
there-
too.
And there's also, yeah, and there's also timelines that you have to meet for project man. I think that sometimes the public wants us to go slow or wants the city to go slower, but also if you go slower, you never get anything built or get things done. So there are timelines for when public feedback can be received. And so
Right.
it's that the advocacy community pay attention to that.
When the bulldozer shows up, it's too late.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, anyway, thank you, Al. I just wanted to highlight, like, I feel like the status quo is just very inequitable and, you know, so hopefully that can be like, be moving, there can be ways found to kind of move things along into a more equitable way. So thank you all very much.
stay plugged in and stay vocal. That would be good.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Old business, speed limit changes contemplated by the Common Council. Rennie, Scott Childress reached out to me and said, would the Complete Streets Advisory Council think about this topic? He has been talking about this for a couple of years. I've met with him a couple of times about it. He is proposing a citywide 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. And we've had lots of conversations about this, and I think what he's looking for is some sort of a letter from us or a note from us about our position on that. So my question to you all is, what's our position on that?
I'm really curious as to the degree of enforcement that's currently occurring.
That's what.
That 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. His enforcement is such a critical component of maintaining safe speeds. Just a point of fact is that any state-owned road in the city is still going to require New York State DOT approval of any speed limit change down to 25 miles per hour as well.
But
What
that's
proportion are there?
it's Albany Avenue
Right, it's 9W.
and I know.
And Henry, no.
Henry's on that's a route.
Right.
State touring route.
City, yeah,
Okay.
city limits.
It's all
It's not-
9W?
it's not-
All of 9W.
All the time.
32 also, isn't it, on both
32
sides?
On both sides, but once it hits the city line, it's a touring route and not a city
So that
responsibility.
is within the purview of the city.
So it's not many vendors.
Well,
Two
and
state highways,
isn't there the section of Washington Ave
Colonel Champ,
Washington Ave.
from
It's a short
Schwank
drive.
north,
Schwank
right?
State.
I think it is.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, I think.
where's the city
Yeah.
line? The city line is near there.
It's the bridge.
So that little stub,
There is a
an
functional
important
class
stub.
here.
oh, it's an important stub.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's the bridge. There's a little bridge over the Rondo.
Just so this-
Oh, right,
No, no, no,
on Chandler Drive,
No, on Washington.
on Washington.
You're
Oh,
gonna,
okay.
you're gonna go,
So that's just one observation. I feel almost every local street should be 25 miles per hour. I think that's a very reasonable speed limit. I don't think traffic should be traveling faster than 25 miles per hour in high-density neighborhood streets. Other higher functional classification of streets, I could go either way, 25 or 30. But then it gets confusing. It's a lot of signage.
It's a lot of signage, but I'm with you, it's not enforced, it's the whole problem we have right now. I mean,
well, New England now, okay, New England's been able to do this in villages for a long time, code 25. And the ones where I've seen it to be effective are the ones that, all these little villages have like one cop, where they have a feedback sign. So as you come into the village, there's a, electronic feedback sign that says you're going too fast, or you're going 40, or,
There's one in Rosendale.
There's one in Rosendale. We used to have one
You had
here.
one on Curly Avenue.
Yeah. for a
Yeah,
while.
the county paid for quite a few to be put up throughout Ulster County at a certain point in time. The city has its own.
Yeah, they can be effective, but you have to do a lot of them in this. You have to,
initially, you definitely have to do a lot of them.
signage, so cost of signage is an issue.
I think that those are helpful on the incoming roads, like when you're, when you're coming from a higher speed into a lower speed. But like, I wouldn't put it on Broadway.
Right, well, should Broadway be 25 miles an hour?
Yes.
You think?
I guess my question about that would be, I think we'd have to ask the engineers about the signalization, because I think the signalization was set up
Progression.
to be a certain, I mean, it could change,
Yeah.
right? But for you to hit all of the green lights,
You
I
have
think
to
it
go 30
was like
miles an
set for 30 miles an hour.
So, which is an interesting point, and I know that John talked about this, you know, John's a traffic engineer. You know, should there be some sort of a traffic study about the effect of this and how do you do this? And it shouldn't just be, you know, one of my pet peeves is highway signs and highway regulation by politicians without any background.
Well, that's the other issue, is that the law states that there has to be a traffic study,
Okay, so they would need to do a traffic study of this,
which would be costly.
which would be costly, and it would have their quality impacts, that you would have to, it would spill over onto your MPO, because it would affect your model, because you're lowering, you know.
Well, I don't think it's gonna affect the model. Based on the
I
state of the
thought
model.
they changed,
But, good point.
I thought they changed something that state DOT would pick up the cost of those studies.
State DOT does not have the capacity to do
They-
those studies. Right now,
Not
for
them
the
to do
speed.
it, but funded. I thought there was a change in
I don't
funding
believe so.
streams.
No, I don't believe so. It may be the case if you can find information otherwise, but I have not heard that that's the case. What I have heard are a lot of complaints from other MPOs that the MPOs are now being put in a position to absorb the cost of studies.
I was gonna ask.
Right, because,
What
yeah,
did
that's
that
the first
say?
thing, first thing you do is ask you, about the UPWD, right, okay. And so a study needs to be done. You know, to me, if you do it without thinking about it, you're gonna end up in a situation where people are gonna disregard they're gonna travel at the speed that they are comfortable traveling at. And you put a bunch of signs, which really won't, and I don't think the city police do traffic or do speed enforcement on a regular basis. I think they do it if you're like
When was it put to 30?
it's been 30 for a long
Almost,
I don't-
almost every city has a 30.
I just feel like
30
people
miles.
don't observe that.
Right.
Yeah.
So and we talked
That's-
about that with the study, you know, how do you get people to go 30 miles an hour? If you can get people to go 30, this desire to go 25 really, you know,
Well, I think, I mean, didn't they recently do this in New York City where they
Yes.
changed it to 25?
they did.
And I'm just wondering if there's an effect of, okay, it's
Disaster.
25, so now instead of going 35, I'm gonna go 30.
It was a disaster when they did
There
it.
was a disaster.
And Staten Island, all Staten Island is 25 miles an hour. Nobody on Staten Island has ever gone 25 miles an hour. You know, and the whole city's supposed to be 25, it's just,
Well, if the traffic lights are still set to 30, they're not gonna go 25.
well, even if they're 20, even if they're set for 25, you know, they'll, you know, they floor it from one light to the next. It just isn't, because enforcement in the city, absent the arterials, you know, the local street system, you know, doesn't have significant traffic enforcement in New York City. Okay, and it's similar here. You know, unless there's, you know, a car crash that results in injury, they don't even want to hear about that.
They have traffic calming, you know, devices there, those sort of turning bumps. I don't know
Yeah.
what the terms are, but you know, they have these things installed all sort of lately, sort of help with that. It's not just the speed limit, there's other.
You have to make people uncomfortable. The traffic, you know, the theory behind traffic calming is people who drive have to be made uncomfortable if they go too fast.
Right, and I talked to y'all about speed bumps, which I thought were good, we didn't.
Not so good.
No, not such a good idea.
Yeah.
for a-
I like speed bumps, but.
Yeah, no, actually, speed tables.
Yeah.
We didn't.
So that's like at the roundabout, right, where you go up and
Yeah.
a little bit and then go down, so.
Over by the-
Unless you're plowing snow, you really don't, you see,
Yeah.
that's when it becomes an
That's a
issue.
problem.
Yeah.
Right. And maintenance. You know, you could do traffic calming as part of that to get to 25. You could do traffic calming to get to 30,
Mm-hmm,
which is really what I would think you'd want to do first, right?
right,
You know, and, you know, narrowing streets like Broadway. You know, Broadway,
well,
when we took the lanes out of Broadway, you know, it reduced the speed. Didn't reduce the traffic.
well, so I mean, you say that, but last night I was walking up from Ronald Island to Midtown and people were flying up the parking lanes because they're empty, and then taking the right at Frank Guido's about
Yes.
40, 50 miles an
Yeah,
hour.
that would be illegal.
And it was also terrifying walking there, just thinking I could get that intersection.
I just saw the same thing. I walked from uptown to here.
Yeah,
And they were queued up at Cedar and Cornell, all the way back to pharmacies. They were backed by Dallas Hot Wieners. It was backed up to there, so people were driving down the bike lanes and turning into Tom Road.
It's
And it's,
very
you know-
illegal and very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, that's an enforcement issue. And, you know, the police need to stop that from happening.
Or have some sort of separation so you can't drive, you know, I don't know what it would
Yeah.
be, but,
Some, or some
But there's
temporary
better stops.
planters.
yeah.
We talked about stuff like that, but, you know, bear in mind, as Claudette points out, that's a problem.
It's a problem.
It's a problem for the guys picking up garbage. It's a problem for deliveries. It's a problem for snowplowing. It's, you know,
It solves one problem, but creates about 5 others.
Yeah.
So,
and it's a liability if somebody hits one.
most definitely, yeah.
I mean, they hit the yield to pedestrians signs,
Mhm.
on North Front Street to the point that they were destroyed. If they're hitting those signs.
Right, well, better that than the pedestrian, I suppose, but still, that's what gonna be next.
So they had one of those big speed signs, you know, the warning signs telling people how fast they were going.
Mhm.
And a pickup truck ran that over and knocked it over. And
I
So
think,
getting, yeah, I'm sorry, just like getting back to
Yeah.
the question at
Right.
hand, which is like, what would we recommend? I mean, I heard Ryan say that you would like to see at 25. I think I would like to see the speed limit at 25.
I think it's the appropriate speed on
It's
local
the
streets.
appropriate speed, so I would agree with that statement, and then I also think that there are challenges with cost. And so if we're getting feedback to Rennie.
Right.
My
talking
recommendation,
about
I would
citywide-
like, we would
citywide-
like to see it, but how
But how do we
will the
get there?
city fund it?
how are you gonna fund,
Yeah.
how are you gonna fund the information or the necessities of getting to being able to implement and enforce the 25 mile an hour?
Right,
Because I agree, I think that it should be, I mean, on my street, Clifton Avenue, you know, if the train is gonna be a long time, God knows, going on Clifton, it's like a speedway, I mean, it's really terrible, and I keep expecting, once or twice I have heard of it, but it's horrible. But once again, to me, it's a matter of enforcement, and if the city does implement it, then they also have to be willing to implement the enforcement for some period of time afterwards.
well, so the cost is first the traffic engineering study,
Right.
then changing all of the signage, so like the wayfinding signage program is $1 million, right?
Oh, it's gonna be.
So
a lot
it
more.
would be changing all of the signage, all the miles per hour signage throughout the entire city.
Yeah.
And then there would be the enforcement costs
I read-
Snow and signalization.
and
Right.
changing the.
So I read some sort of reports on places that have done lowering their speed limit citywide, and I saw that costs can also be offset just by the fewer number of accidents and crashes. It almost can offset like the cost of changing street signs and that sort of thing.
But
That's
that's a macro level, that's not the real cost to taxpayers.
Right, but it was just sort of interesting.
But it's a good point.
Yeah.
So is this the meeting about the Go Back America funds?
Nope.
No. This is Complete Streets Advisory Council. The Arts Commission, I think, is in conference room 1,
So next door.
on the other side of Chambers.
Other side of the chamber, walk through the chambers and then
Thank
to
you.
the right.
We're in it.
I often drive Broadway, and I go about 25 miles an hour, and I hit the lights just fine. So I don't know what the dynamic is there, that I don't have a problem, you know, with getting jammed up at the lights.
It's an engineering question.
Yeah, it's not that it's a problem, it's that it's a question. Because I don't remember.
You don't know if they've been received.
I don't think they've been I don't think they necessarily been actuated. There was an issue around this one and the one that they just put in over by Roosevelt. And there was some issue around,
But those are New York State DOT signals.
right, but these are the city run, these, yeah,
The city runs these.
okay,
The Broadway signals were supposed to be timed with each other.
right.
So that at a certain speed, you would hit all the greens, and I don't
Right.
know if that's 20,
Yeah.
there might be a range
Yeah, there's a
between
window.
25 and
Right.
30, but
It's a
I'm
window,
not,
yeah.
you know, that part.
I mean, this is somewhat anecdotal, but when considering costs and trade-offs, I don't believe KPD cruisers have radar guns.
I don't think
It's
so.
my understanding.
Yeah, it's my understanding as well.
And so if you consider the cost to pay for radar guns
Right.
and all KPD cruisers, or at least a number of them,
Yeah, but it's a
versus
revenue
the
source,
sign.
so.
and it could be a potential revenue source. But I mean, the police are reluctant right now to engage with the public. This is not my observation, it's been an observation
It's a
made by Chief
nationwide
Sinatra. It's a
observation.
nationwide observation that's been mentioned by our police officers at the Traffic Safety Board. So I don't want to point the finger too much at KPD. I understand that we're at a very unique time right now, and there is a reluctance to engage with the public for a wide variety of reasons. So it's difficult, but without enforcement, we're not going to see a reduction.
And even before we got to this point, of which I definitely understand their reluctance, they weren't doing it. So, you know, I mean, to say that, oh, they're not doing it because they're reluctant to engage with the public, they weren't doing it 10 years ago. So, I mean, to any extent, that was, you know.
They're not equipped to do it, really.
I see the state police like on Hurley Avenue, pulling cars.
And 9W2, they're always.
Yeah, Lucas, too.
Yeah, no, they're in the city doing speed enforcement.
It seems to come and go. I think they definitely have some sort of intervals.
Weekend, yeah, those big weekends.
They're deploying for a reason.
Well, do we want to make a recommendation to say that, yes, we support the idea with the following caveats that the person said, you know, you gotta be able to do this and that with the funding. And tell them that's where we are with it. It's a great idea.
We can say, in concept, we think it's a great idea. You know, the severity rate of crashes at 25 miles an hour is significantly different than the severity rate at 30. It makes a difference. So we can say, yes, we think we support the concept.
Also just sort of welcoming nature to bikes, bicyclists, and pedestrians, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's hurdles, you know, the traffic study is a hurdle, the cost of signage is a hurdle, cost of enforcement is a hurdle.
And I think another thing I would add is that, I mean, I think we talked about all those, but ultimately engineering of the streets is, I mean, whether it's a speed table or a bike boulevard, right? That's really what's gonna have them slow down.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And so,
Traffic calming.
not
Not
forget the 3 E's, right?
Yeah.
Like not forget it,
And
pointing that out, not forgetting that.
you remember how excited the common council was about education when we talked about an education program? You know,
Oh, they were
education is a big piece
excited,
of-
you remember?
Yeah.
The fourth E,
The second
excited.
time, or third time, right. So I mean, that really, there needs to be an education part of this. You need to tell people that 25 miles an hour makes a difference. You should go 25 miles an hour, which they're not gonna, you know, which is a cost that they're not gonna like as well, but I think we have to mention it. I would suggest.
I definitely, I mean, that was that was one of my last battles
Mhm.
here, I think that, you know, ongoingly, traffic safety education is just something that's gotta be ongoing, and unfortunately, there's a cost to that, and there was reluctance to spend any money on it at all, but I think.
So I'll draft something up with these points and send it around to everybody and see what you think. How's that? Yep. E-bike shared system proposed ordinance. Where are we? What do we think? Emily sent some comments over.
I
like
did.
2 minutes ago.
Ellie responded.
Okay.
Yes.
Did I hear I'm doing it? No.
Hi, everyone. So last time I talked to you guys, we had not yet worked through our draft. I've since then done some, work with the language. I've incorporated some feedback from Live Well Kingston and Climate Smart Kingston. I'm still waiting on more feedback from both those commissions, and we'll be at their meetings in a couple weeks, hopefully. I wanted to bring it back to you guys and see if anyone had any feedback. Some of the things I have incorporated in the working draft so far, we did add language that actually makes the e-bike street legal. I think that was, whose comment was that? Was
John.
John, yes, good call. We have removed, I believe we removed sidewalks from the permitted, did we remove sidewalks from the permitted?
Change the level of bike class.
Yes, we've changed the level of permitted by class to 1 and 2, not permitting level 3s. We have added sections on non-compliance to our permit requirements, so if a group comes in and just drops bikes, they haven't received their permits, they get hit with fines. A number of little changes or big changes to the language that was originally presented last month or 2 months ago. I was wondering if anyone else had any further comments. If you have comments now or if you want to email me, either is acceptable.
Can I bring up as a discussion point that the cost part that I put in that email?
Yes.
And so first of all, is a clarifying question. So when I was reading through it, I love that there's sort of 2 tiers of operators. There's a free operator sort of tier, and then there's like a for-profit operator. I love that. But I could see the YMCA, for example, trying to do a bike share program that's not electric, that's sort of a little more homegrown, right? And I think a $500 applicant fee, a $300 permit, annual permit, and then $80 per share device would cut that project immediately.
Yeah.
So is there a way to have there sort of be the for-profit pricing and then a not-for-profit or very low-cost profit pricing? And what should that be?
For e-bikes as well as regular bikes?
That's open for that's open for discussion, but I could see an example of some of our community members doing a not bike share.
Yeah, right,
People have
right.
tried, right?
Yeah.
And if we put this amount in there, it'll
Right,
never
right,
happen.
right.
So we could also incorporate it that if it's a free operator for e-bikes, that their cost is also lower. I support that as well. But I just don't want this to be prohibitive
Right.
to a kind of a more homegrown bike share. That's my concern.
I will, a note is that all these kind of like quantitative things in the law, whether it's like the amount of bicycles or it's the cost, those have not yet been determined. I believe we're taking those to the finance committee, I would assume, for discussion. But I think we can definitely incorporate a lower applicant fee for a free operator. I'm in support of that, if you're in support of that.
So free operator, meaning that they're not charging for.
They're not charging for.
That was one of the definitions, was a free operator.
Yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense. I don't know how many nonprofit
Could afford it.
bike share entities there would be, but
Well, that just makes me a little concerned that what if something falls through? Is there any language around removal of the vehicles and stations?
Yeah, there is a section in here, I think under compliance, that calls for the operator to remove their bicycles at the request of the city.
termination.
Termination.
It's section A,
Yes.
the city reserves the right to terminate a shared system permit at any time and require that the entire fleet of the devices which applies to be removed from its territory.
Well, I don't know if anyone else has thoughts about the sort of cutoff time. I sent some comments about that. I thought there shouldn't be one. I don't know. if anyone
Yeah.
else-
That was one of the kind of main points of discussion going into this. There's a couple. I've received feedback. Most people say that they don't support a cutoff time. I believe 1 or 2 people have said that they do support a cutoff time, but did not provide reason. If you, as a committee, like unanimously don't want a cutoff time, that would be, a more powerful statement that we could, use to remove that from the law.
That's a good point. If it is transportation, then you can't have a cutoff time.
Right.
Yeah, so I would be of the mind, I would agree with you, there should not be a cutoff time, it's gonna be transportation. I mean, if it's recreational, I mean, if it's
Right.
then that's different, but I.
The usefulness, right, it relies on it being at hand at all times.
Right.
Yeah, you, and honestly, like, well, I don't know, you can't drive your bike,
Ah, don't go there.
You shouldn't drink and drive.
Right. Okay.
You'd rather get out of the car.
You shouldn't move anything. Right,
Some people shouldn't walk.
but-
And I mean, if there's an option, you'd rather have
Oh,
them
you have the
ride
right-
on a bike
That's
than in
my
a car, right?
Well, if it's transportation, you can't stop it at night.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's,
So are we unanimous in that we think that it should not have a limit, not to limit?
If it's in transportation, yeah. I think
If it's
so.
transportation, it should not have a limit.
Yeah.
Okay, is that helpful?
Very helpful.
Okay.
And along with that, I think the geo blocking, because a lot of those areas potentially, the users could potentially need to go there for purposes, worship purposes,
Yeah.
things like that. Just geocoding them out or using those areas doesn't seem to make sense to me.
I think the geofencing is really designed to be like, you can't go to the town of Ulster. You can't go to Hurley. You can't leave the city limits, which in and of itself is going to be an issue because besides us governmental folks, most people, a lot of people don't see Kingston to end at Kingston proper.
No, they don't.
However, we're not going to be managing as a city, a system outside of our city
Right, you
limits.
can't, you're right, you can't.
It would have to be a county-run system or a shared service with the town of Ulster.
Right.
So at the very least, the geofence, the ultimate geofence is on Kingston proper. If we choose to do another geofence, like you can't go to the far extent of Glen Street, or you can't go to, you know, I don't know,
Right.
whatever. I don't know that we would do that.
No, well, the law just kind of enables the city to geofence in any particular way that we want. I think the specific, like when we bring an operator in and when they, you know, start developing their system, they will be like, where do we want the geofence? Like, where do we want the boundaries to be? And at that point, we can have a discussion about like, if there's any areas in the city where we don't want bikes. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Or they may not want
Or
to.
they,
Oh, so
Well,
for
you
instance,
got
like
a
off of the road in Hasbrook Park. Like, we don't want people to bring their bike up into the forest of Hasbrook Park, right? Or into the cliffs or whatever of
But right
the
now,
state park,
you can't bring a bicycle in Gallup Park along the promenade,
right?
and that would be a destination.
But so you get to the destination, then you have to walk. Right?
But
Well,
then you
I was
have to
thinking
have
about-
a station,
I think about
Right,
McDonald's.
lots of docking stations. Right. I was thinking about Ravine Street, I don't think we should have one.
What do you say, I can't ride my bike on the street? Is that what you're saying?
It's almost steep.
I don't know, I've seen
I ride my bike on the street.
Up too.
three kids on Quarry Street, two had to be transported, another one was driven by their parents to the hospital with crashes,
Bicycle crash.
bicycle crashes. On Quarry,
Just
coming out from school.
Yeah.
One kid made a left onto Howland and crashed, and I picked his front teeth up and put him in a baby food jar.
God, okay,
And
John.
his parents.
All right,
John.
moving right along.
Yeah.
So is there anything else
So-
you need from us?
Yeah, there's also a question about permitting the devices on multi-use paths. So that would be as defined in here as a public way designed and designated for use by pedestrians, persons riding bicycles, and to the extent also permitted those employing non-motorized conveyances. Like roller skates.
So we have
So-
at least two of those that, the next two ones. How would you enforce that?
Geofencing?
Wait, so you're saying not allowing them on the?
Currently, it does permit them, but the definition of multi-use path could be used like for the green lines, for example, or for the rail trail, or even for the promenade.
They have built-in speed limits, right, on the e-bikes anyway.
Yes.
So I mean, I guess, you know, as long as they can't go too fast, I don't really have an objection to it.
Well, class two will go
We made
20
that
miles an hour.
Yeah.
Class two might go 20 miles an hour.
It's class one and class two. Class
Right.
two is not supposed to exceed, what is it?
20.
20.
Class three can go 25, but we're not doing class.
Right.
I mean,
Well, the other-
you guys want with the regular bicycle, fence.
Oh, you can, yeah,
So, I mean,
The multi-use path is people walking, bikes, I mean, strollers, whatever. And if you've got somebody going 25 miles an hour, that's not exactly fun.
right.
So what do you mean by what kind of speed? Because I would say that if it's motorized, I would want it. I really.
But I think that the e-bike is, I think you just made the point, you can go, I can go 40 miles an hour on my regular bike.
You just showed off.
Cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no.
You can, if you're going downhill, you can't,
Yeah, right.
right,
We're just
so.
gonna have to hope that,
That you don't run over somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think.
or
that
you
it-
geofence it out, you know?
I'm just trying to understand because there will be, the average walker is not going 40 miles an hour.
There will be
But I-
conflicts, there's conflicts
There's
on the
conflict.
walkway over the Hudson right now, very
Right.
serious ones regarding e-bikes, trying to establish a clear policy.
They allow it?
I believe so, yes.
Well, we've got
So-
the Empire State Trail,
Right,
and whatever we do should be in alignment with that, because you've
Yeah.
got a lot of people coming up from the city, passing through Kingston, going up to Albany, and then if they go on, they'd be on the Erie Canal. And I saw, on the bike trip I just did, I saw a lot of e-bikes. I was surprised. A lot of them were, I'll just call them mature riders.
Yeah.
experience, right.
Experienced riders. But there were a lot of them. And I think if we do anything that runs contrary to the state regulations in terms of what types of bikes, it's a problem. And if we restrict them from using like the Kingston Point Trail and I forgot what it's called, the piece down by the Brickyard,
Right.
that's an issue.
Are you have any speed limits on that area?
Depends on where you are. But a lot of the trails that I was on in Ohio, Washington DC, Maryland, they had posted speed limits 15 miles an hour, which
I guess what I'm just feeling is that, walkers, pedestrians are getting lost. I mean, some people just walk, because for whatever reasons, they can't see to ride a bike, or they're not gonna be on an e-bike. And there's gotta be a level of comfort and safety with them, with people, not having to worry about things whizzing by them at speeds that are really untenable. So I'm just beginning to hear like, yes, we all want bikes and we get that, but I also feel that we're losing pedestrian access. And if the trails are only made for bikes and more able-bodied people who are running or whatever, I think you're losing a segment of the population. So I'm not against this, but I keep hearing more about concern for the bike people as opposed to those who are not the bike people.
Right now, we're talking about class 1 and class 2. Class 2 is a max speed of 20 miles per hour, so up to 20 miles per hour. And the rules of the road stipulate that a bicycle needs to yield to the pedestrian.
They don't.
I know, and cars don't go. 20
I
miles
know,
per
but
hour.
bikes sometimes are even more hazardous than cars, so.
I agree with that, and particularly, and scooters even more so. There's just a tendency to weave.
Yeah.
And the thing with those e-bikes is, yes, they've got speed limits on the assist part, but if somebody is capable of pedaling faster than
They're
that,
gonna go faster.
they're gonna go faster than that, the conditions are.
So a solution might be that if we allow them on the multi-use paths, we put a speed limit on the paths.
Okay,
yeah.
Maybe that could help.
They put a speed limit of
Yeah,
10 miles an hour.
Something, just to give those of us on 2 feet and a cane a chance, I mean, really.
I attend the county's transportation, what's that committee called?
The Traffic Safety Board.
No, the trails, county trails advisory committee. And there's been discussions about this, ongoing discussions, and I know that our incoming county executive is, an advocate of non-motorized transportation. And there's already meetings set up with her to discuss the e-bike issue. There's, some hopes that there's more of a county level involvement with that. And I think a lot of discussions that we had at those meetings involved speed. Talked about walkway, talked about what it's called, the trail that comes through Highland.
Hudson Valley Rail.
Hudson Valley Rail Trail. The Walker Valley Rail Trail, that's part of the Empire State Trail, so you got, tour cyclists coming through. So these discussions are ongoing on a county level already. And I think that try to do anything in the city, it should be in alignment with that. It's a fairness issue, it's a consistency issue, it's an enforcement issue. Every time you cross a political boundary, you've got a different set of rules, it's unenforceable. And who's gonna enforce it?
So a speed limit would be good.
Okay, the speed limit would be consistent with that of the Empire Trail, or
I would
consistent
think
with?
speed limit on all multi-use trails in the city would be a good idea.
Yeah.
But one that is, if there's a
That's-
policy set for EST,
Right.
make it
Consistent with the
consistent.
joining
Yeah.
policy, but
Yeah, let's-
absent of joining policy, if they can't get their act together, then,
And,
you know,
I bet if you looked into EST, I bet they have a sense.
Okay.
Empire State Trail.
and, we might want it less than the speed limit between, if you're between Albany and Buffalo, you shouldn't have to go 15 miles an hour the whole way.
No.
It's pretty boring out there.
But then the only question is where to get the money for the signs.
Sign,
All right, got signs for everything else. So.
There were small signs. for
We'll add it to Rennie's signs for the
Right.
25-mile-an-hour.
Right. So, good, was that helpful?
Very helpful, yeah, and if anyone else has any other comments, you can always send me an email. We are, like I said, I have a working draft and I'm bringing this to a couple other groups. There's also some internal review that has to happen before we actually bring this to laws and rules of the finance committee. So any feedback between now and then is absolutely welcome. You definitely should be an email. Additionally, when I do have a final draft, we'll be seeking a letter of support if you're in support of the legislation. So that's something to consider. I'll definitely send everybody a copy of the final draft when we have it. But yeah, thank you very much.
You might want to, just by way of, you might want to run your final draft by a vendor or two to see if there's any fatal flaws in there that we
Yeah.
don't see. And they might say, this is terrible, I'm not gonna do this because, you're.
Yeah, that was, I had that reaction when I read it, was that it was almost too many resolutions,
Right.
too granular.
Right, yeah, you create a law that nobody will, that nobody's interested in doing,
Yeah,
where we got. So I would suggest you run by one or two of them, probably two of them would be better than all.
Yeah. Is there anything in here that you think is excessive that should be stricken?
well, the fee structure for a fleet of 25, 50 bikes, whatever. But that, I don't see how anybody can make any money with that, even if they had advertised. If we're not gonna have utilization anywhere approaching 100%. I mean, if we've got overall 10 or 15%, I'd be surprised. Quite frankly, how many uses a day out of a bike?
Well, but, a vendor will give you feedback like that.
Yeah,
This isn't,
and
I
that's,
can't do it.
and I'm just basing this on what I've seen around the Northeast and Midwest where I've ridden, where I saw all these facilities. Like Canton, Ohio, they had a nice network, lots of scooters, e-bikes and bike lanes. And I was literally standing in the middle of the street in Canton around lunchtime by the county office building with no fear of being hit by a car. And I saw two people on a scooter and nothing else was being touched. And this was a weekday, business day. They had a lot of investment there.
Welcome to the Rust Belt, John.
Yeah, no
That's
utilization.
how Buffalo was 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was just astounding how much money they put into those facilities and that utilization just wasn't there. And then Washington DC was a different story. There was a lot of people A lot of people using the, I forgot what they call their share system down there. A lot of people using Schenectady. I worked up there. Yeah, they had a bike share system. I did not see high utilization. There were lots of bikes lined up nicely. It's a CDPH. Yeah, CDPHP system.
But it wasn't, you know, that's not the problem.
Yeah.
So they can do that.
Not a lot of utilization.
Right. And that goes to the vendor. You know, New York is very used, Philly's used, you know.
Yeah.
Baltimore.
That's why I keep thinking we need a regional system here to even attract the vendor. I don't know if you can get somebody to come in and make a huge investment on, especially the dock system, with chargers in it. If they're limited to 10 feet, what's that gonna hold, 5 or 6 bikes? Just to install it, and have the electric service and all that. I mean, that's a big
But they'll
investment.
tell you what they're.
No chance of recovery.
Yeah, they'll tell you what they want.
Yeah.
And regular bikes might be, you know, a combination thing like in the city, like in New York.
Yeah.
You know, where there's both at the docking station, electric and regular bikes.
New Paltz had a free system, you know, regular bikes for a while. I don't know what happened with that. I'm trying to think who I can talk. Actually, I do know who I can talk to. Find out what became of that. I don't know, maybe it was a timing problem. Maybe they were too early.
But that is an interesting measure. There's 2 bike shops in town now.
Mhm.
I wonder, you know, it'd be an interesting conversation with Brian on a utility or, you know, what does he think about it?
I
Is there a
think the cycle
possibility?
would be open against them.
Will it? Well, you know, what is the possibility of bike rental in the city? What is it, what do they think? What have they heard? You know,
So
the people come and say, can I rent a bike? You know, if that happens.
a few people have tried. And in fact, I think the art port down the Roundup right now is renting bikes.
Oh, wow, okay.
I can't imagine that many. But a few people have tried.
Yeah.
And they've not been successful.
You would think seasonally, it would, you know.
You would think in the summer, especially down like Artport, where the cruise ships come in, you know, there might be a market there.
What is it? The bike shop in Woodstock.
Oh,
Overlook. They got bike rentals.
oh, do
They've got one out in Shopee by the trailhead.
they? Yeah, no, that's a smart location.
They are renting enough bikes to justify it, but they've got the locations for it. In the city here, I know Bill from Timpson Cyclery, you know, looked into this, and in fact, Bill went before him. We looked into that, and there just wasn't enough sustainable business there to justify the investment. It's not quite right. I don't know, maybe the timing is off. Maybe today,
Might,
you know, we've got more of a tourist economy going here.
and the bikes are cheaper or more, yeah. it might be
Yeah.
right.
And the guy that rents them on the Walker Valley Rail Trail by the Bicycle Cafe, or the Trail Cafe.
Yeah.
He did sort of okay during the height of the COVID, but you know, struggled from day one with that. I've talked to him, you know, since he opened. So, you know, that's a prime spot for rentals right on the trail there. He wasn't doing a whole lot, but it's a tough market around here for that.
Okay, let's move on to landscaping and vegetation management. You're up for this item.
Yeah, I asked for this. And what prompted it was something that actually brought up at the Transportation Safety Board meeting, or whatever that group was called.
The traffic safety board
Yeah,
or the transportation council? The traffic safety board?
Traffic Safety Board
Okay.
with Joe Sinaga and
Yeah,
all those
that's the
folks.
Ulster County traffic safety.
I go out and I walk around all the time and see what's going on with the traffic and the facilities. I get by the roundabout, and there's just one of the nice signs, you know, pedestrians, make sure you're visible, drivers might not see it, blah, blah, blah. And it's right next to this big bush that was planted right at the crosswalk. at the roundabout on the north side of Albany Avenue. And I was like, they're hiding the crosswalk behind this big bush. And I went through there a week or so later and the bush was gone.
Good.
Was it Dave Corrigan?
Corrigan, yeah.
I
He's the
think he
resident.
was in the meeting. He might have something.
He was
to
at
do.
the most recent meeting, which I was unable to attend. He was not at the.
He
front.
was not, but the other
There
one.
was a meeting summary, but I don't think my meeting summary had that level of detail. So
Ah.
I don't know what happened to the.
Somebody removed it. It was gone.
All right, good. It worked.
That was.
The
you know,
system works.
Yeah, that was one of those shoot ourselves in the foot situations where consideration wasn't given. But the other spots that I've seen problems, and I think Christian mentioned this too, is trees along like Green Hill Avenue, Empire State Trail, Hurley Avenue. If you're riding on that, you get smacked in the face with a tree branch. You know, there needs to be some kind of a pruning standard. And these are, kind of high profile because of the bike lanes and Empire State multi-use path there. But around town, there's a lot of places where vegetation's an issue, for cyclists in particular, but also pedestrians. I could, won't bore you with all the spots I can think of off the top of my head, but I don't know how we can kind of have a design / monitoring system in place of who should do that, but I think,
If it's on the roadside, people should be removing vegetation to 14 feet. DPW has a pretty good handle on that. If you have specific locations that you think that's not happening, they can certainly address it.
yeah, I actually recorded some, specific places to the 411 school, and it's nothing got done for, I would say, at least 6 months. And they were, it's a prime season for cyclists, and now that it's fall and there's hardly anybody out there, the pruning is done along. At
Just a
least some
point.
of the trees on Hurley Avenue.
Just a point of clarification, it's saying that is the homeowner, the resident is responsible for 14 feet back from the, I'm not.
Not 14 feet back, 14 feet in height.
Oh, in height, okay, I was.
Even right across from George Washington School at
Still hard.
Street Street, okay, is that Franklin?
GW?
Franklin, right?
Yeah.
There's a house there that the vegetation, the landscaping in front of that has encroached on the sidewalk so badly that you can't use a sidewalk.
Well, so this kind of goes back to.
Wall Street.
Yeah,
For
Wall
me,
Street.
it goes back to this idea of the sidewalk districts, sort of, where I understand that once the sidewalk is put in, it is then the homeowner's or business owner's whatever responsibility, but in many places, and I have a list of them I can go through too, where the sidewalk has basically been consumed by vegetation, so that it hardly even exists anymore. So then if you have a city committed to building a sidewalk, you could then have something to really start from, but it becomes a thing where you're walking the street, you're walking in front of pipes, you're walking, whatever.
In theory, there's the public public works is to enforce. I believe.
Encroachment
sidewalk.
on sidewalks.
Checking if
You're supposed to be able to have
Not-
AC, right, can't have snow, can't be impede, traffic, pedestrian traffic, whatever
Parking
on
on
the sidewalk.
sidewalks.
Enforcing it is an issue if you don't have built-in enforcement, usually within the public works department. All 3 departments I had, we had that, or we got a lot of neighbors who complained. So you could go out and at least address it individually. Since I lived in Kingston, I don't see that happening. And it's a huge problem. It is definitely a problem.
I saw 2 possibilities. One is a kind of public service announcement type thing that hopefully somebody would pick up in the press.
Which they did last year in the winter. We made a recommendation and the mayor's office put on a bulletin a couple of times. Every time there was a snow emergency.
Yeah.
They put it out,
Your
yeah, it was
responsibility.
good,
Yeah.
yeah.
Tack
It's a
that
good-
on.
That's a good thing to be tacked on.
I think we might want to, and I don't know who the we is, but I think we might want to as some kind of a public service announcement thing geared towards the vegetation management, because it's definitely a problem around some of the schools. Quarry and Hamlin on the Bailey side, that intersection, you can't see to the right because of the vegetation, the combination of the shrub and trees. And I've watched cars so intent on looking up the hill that they pull out in front of cars coming from the left. And it's not just once or twice, it's a pattern of it. And I know Shane Gallo sent one of his crews over there, and they cut literally everything off from the ground to the heavens on that side of the trees at that time, but it's all grown back. You still can't see around the tree trunks.
It might be, I mean, for the first step, yes, ma'am.
Oh,
No.
you finish your thought.
And- Go ahead.
I guess I wanted, so to go back to your original thought about the roundabout and now Broadway that's officially open. So I do want to just sort of make publicly clear that there are 3 full-time staff positions in the city budget to maintain Broadway, the roundabout, and other city properties. Currently, I think they're just 2 people are filled, but there's 3 full-time positions. So for that, maybe the bush got removed because maybe that was part of that. So I just, to go back to that part of the conversation, there is already in place a procedure for that to be maintained.
When you say other city, sorry,
Yeah.
when you say other city properties,
Yeah. What do I mean?
okay, I'm sure Broadway, boy, this brings back memories. I'm sure Broadway got funded because somebody said who's gonna maintain it, and so part of it, they put in these 3 FTEs. The part that worries me is when you say other city properties, because that can get stretched to everything in the city and they just can't do it all. So
Yeah.
what is Broadway supposed to need 3 FTEs in the
No,
roundabout?
I don't know all the properties, but included in that also is City Hall, for example. So City Hall did not have, like, correct me if I'm wrong,
Dedicated
anybody, but I don't believe that there was staff dedicated to maintaining the shrubbery around City Hall. So this will be included in that. The
Those 3
parks-
guys are gonna be stretched pretty thin.
Yeah, the parks are maintained by park staff, so those are other additional positions.
Mhm.
But these three, so I don't know which other properties, but I specifically have heard City Hall, Broadway, roundabout.
And then well, they're all in here, but you know, all the older people will start saying, well, we've got these 3 people. I feel bad for the 3 people because they're gonna be stretched.
They'll be busy.
A very, 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 very thin
Yeah,
line, so,
I
you
thought
know,
that,
but that's good.
So I would suggest that one way to help these guys, whoever when they appear, is to use 411 to make the city aware of the
311.
locations.
311.
311.
311, to make the city aware of locations that need attention. And
I
would
guess
suggest
as a
that.
secondary to that, I mean, John was saying they use that, but it didn't work, but perhaps if we could have a running tally here at this meeting of specific issues that don't get addressed, and then we as the advisory
Yeah.
council members could alert DPW.
Can we get a dump from 311, like the app or whatever, or like sort of?
I can look into it.
Yeah,
I'd
I mean,
have
my
to ask.
understanding of how 311 works is that they're supposed to get back to you.
Yeah,
and
I
let you
did,
know.
I had one of these vegetation on sidewalk things and it
It didn't happen.
did, no, they did.
Oh, it did happen, and then they let you know that they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, but I imagine that
Yeah, but-
the number of requests they receive is probably astronomical.
Well, that is a good question, I don't even know how many people know about it or use it regularly, you know?
That's a
Yeah.
good
The
point.
311,
Yeah,
it's on the bottom of every mayor's newsletter,
okay.
but true.
Yeah.
But it could be emphasized again.
You're right, it would be good, and we should do that, and we should make note, we could comprise, make a list of the ones that we send in and send it over to Ed.
Yeah.
And say,
A lot of,
by the way,
a lot of line of sight issues, especially near intersections that, for people on the sidewalks, people on bicycles who are like at the curb.
Right.
They're not as visible perhaps as somebody in a vehicle who's out in the middle of the driveway.
and I'll take responsibility, there's a couple in Midtown where I drive by and the sign is blocked by vegetation, and I almost blow by it every time, and I think, yeah, I should let somebody know, and I don't. You know?
Yeah.
But, okay,
Yeah,
good.
it's like my streetlight thing. I mean, I personally recorded over 350 outages. And people started paying attention.
Yeah, get right, get right. The last thing we have on the agenda, it's a good segue, sidewalk restoration idea. This is an idea.
Hi, Joyce.
Yeah.
I-
This is an idea that, about his frustration with the sidewalk district, and his feeling that, given the current common council, it's not gonna be difficult. You know, because you need a referendum, you need the council to bless it, you know, it's, and he's frustrated like we are about the sidewalk issues. So he suggested as a possibility that we might want to think about recommending to him or to the common council that every time a building changes hands in the city, we make them bring the sidewalk up to code before they can close on the house, before they can close on the sale. Realtors, my experience with this in some areas, realtors don't like this.
Oh my God.
However, who cares?
Mhm.
Well, I don't care.
You don't care.
Nobody votes for me, I don't care.
Well, the alternative is a real estate transfer tax. And then that tax goes into a pool
To do that.
for sidewalk maintenance.
So, you know, what do you think? Tax, you said the word tax, the common council's gonna go.
I don't know if there's enough
Fee
turnover.
sounds better than tax, but I do have one question. Does the city of Kingston, are they responsible for the sidewalk around trees planted by the city of Kingston?
The way our code is written, no, it's your
Okay.
problem.
That's your problem, okay? Because see, in other places, there were sidewalks that were damaged because it was a city tree.
And most of them are, most of them
And
are.
so the city repaired adjacent sidewalk. And then the homeowner sometimes made a side deal with the people, it wasn't the city, but the contractor, and they got a better break on fixing their sidewalk at that time. So I just wanted to know, so if it's all on the property owner, then if it changes hands, I guess that's the best way to do it.
So I just worry that even with the new zoning or whatever it is, standards for sidewalks, that you're gonna have a million different people doing the sidewalks, and there'll just be inconsistencies. And
Well,
Yeah.
there's a consistent, there is a standard that is part of the city chart. so
Right.
you
Yeah,
go-
we helped to write.
Right.
But even with that, you're still gonna have
You have to get
different companies doing
Well, you
it.
have to get a
right?
But you have to get a permit,
You have
get
to
it
get a permit
inspected,
for
so,
the-
so
it works.
it would have to pass code because of inspection.
It has to be concrete.
From what I've seen, I think they've done a good job, sorry.
Yeah.
I know it's anecdotal, but on my observations, they seem to be following the code.
When people do
Replace it.
Yeah.
replace it.
Yeah, to do with blue stuff.
Even when they do it concrete, in my neighborhood, they do concrete ones, and they are consistent with the code, and they're well done, you know.
Alright.
The only, I mean, kind of along the same lines of what you're saying is that, the only thing is, I think that this may be just as challenging, I mean, it's not a referendum. maybe,
Right.
But it could be politically challenging, and I'm just thinking about the really long term. And, there may not be enough turnover, right? There may not be enough real estate turnover to really make a difference. And the sidewalk district was, ultimately to rebuild 3 miles a year.
Oh, I mean, great.
So, and as an ADA transition plan, I do think that the sidewalk district for long term would make.
Mhm.
would
Is a
make more
better-
sense.
Well, for
But
the, yeah,
The initial political fight is gonna be challenging, and maybe it would pass, but, I don't know, I don't see this being the best solution for the long term, and also along those lines, what you were saying, Kingston has just been so dragged for so long, that we don't have a consistent design for our streetscapes. And so like Henry and Franklin and Broadway, like now we're gonna have, we have trees placed at certain intervals, we have, we're creating that complete street room. And if you do it like this,
Right,
all
it's
you're
just
doing
a
is fixing
patchwork
sidewalks.
of,
You're just fixing sidewalks, right? This is not gonna say that you have to put it in a certain it's not going to redesign the street
No, no,
to
no, it's
create
gonna
that
replace-
street
right,
canopy, to
right.
create the entire feel of the street.
This will
And
replace lots of
so,
sidewalk.
yeah.
You know, now you see occasionally, rarely, people do their sidewalk, replace the sidewalk in front of their building because their insurance company is making.
Right.
I don't know people, the insurance company, their homeowners, they come out and say, you don't replace the sidewalk, you don't, you're gonna cancel. You know, because there's a big liability there. You know, that's creating a patchwork, if you will, depending on the insurance company. Now, this would be a patchwork depending upon when the house turns over. But, you know, is it better than nothing?
Yeah, it's
Which
maybe
one?
better than nothing, but I'm just thinking, if we think about our energy now, like, let's put it into the best long-term solution. And I also think that part of the reason for the sidewalk district was to start transitioning the whole way we think about sidewalks. Okay, so we think about the street, the motor vehicle traveling, that's a public right of way, right? Public maintains it, and, you know, DPW maintains it, we repave it, why don't we do that for sidewalks?
Right.
Why don't, sidewalks are a public facility, why are we putting that entirely on the homeowners? So that's where I think
He's only bringing
it's
the
awesome.
Yeah,
He's only bringing.
No,
the-
I'm just, I'm not, you know.
And this approach would not address the gaps, and there are serious gaps for ridiculous reasons. At one point in time, someone decided we're not going to force builders to put sidewalks, so Lucas, Clifton, there's so many.
There's so many, and it's ridiculous.
And the gaps are ridiculous, and that's why a sidewalk district would begin to solve that. And I think, I mean, a sidewalk, we always knew sidewalk district would be a hard fight, and a little bit somewhat untenable, given that we're a high tax state already. But, I mean, from a pragmatic approach, here are the two alternatives. You can have your sidewalk fee district, or we change the law to make it the responsibility of the property owner, and we're going to enforce it. The choice is yours, Kingston. It really is that simple.
It is that simple.
It's
And
not,
other
it might not be,
communities in New
but
York City are doing it.
Yes, they are.
Because it's gonna, you know, it's not impossible, it's just,
I just spent about 9 days in Burlington,
yeah,
which has a dedicated crew that does sidewalks and street trees.
I think that's.
And they are using constantly. They are replacing sidewalk, they're replacing
At
street
one in
trees
New
that are
Haven,
bad.
at one in
You
Hartford.
know, it's what they, it's all they do, it's what they do.
That's all they do all day long.
Works great.
right, and it's beautiful, and it's public, it's a public
Yeah,
space, so I think that this solution is just continuing the paradigm of, let's put it on the homeowners.
Well, it doesn't
and,
even fix
you know.
the ADA thing, because you're sure gonna have a
Right.
crappy sidewalk and a great brand new sidewalk and a crappy sidewalk again, and.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
There's no ADA transition plan at the solution,
That's true.
right, there's no predictability,
No,
Right.
all right, like,
no,
so, yeah, I'm not in
it's
favor.
liability, it's
I
liability.
think I'm
That's
thinking
right.
that I just think my recommendation is that we highly recommend that we move forward with the sidewalk improvement district and just keep trying, you know, see if we can make it happen. And
I'm trying to boil it down in the simplest terms of thinking of John Key Public and how to make the case, like, really, A or B, fee district, or you're responsible for your property. And I think the argument that we might hear is that, well, why can't DPW pay for it through its current budget? And we all know that the DPW is tapped out.
Right.
There is no wiggle room there to have a crew, its own crew, to do that.
But if they do it with separate crew, they
That's the
can
case.
no, but and this would be a much more expensive endeavor.
Well, and the other thing about the sidewalk improvement district is that now you have a set source of funding that
Oh, yeah.
you can amplify with grants.
Mm.
So you can use that for match for a street, you know, if you wanna do a mile or half a mile. Now you can get a DOT or a federal grant to match with that funding source, and instead of doing 3 miles a year, maybe we can do it faster, maybe we can do 5 miles a year, you know, so I just think that it's, you know, in the long term, gonna be the best.
Is there a correlation between trip and fall liability and payouts with what you would say in terms of fixing the sidewalks of the city, taking that responsibility?
We got that data at one time,
We did get that data.
and I was incredibly disappointed.
Yeah.
I am so glad I was never in these cities. God knows, I spent a lot of time in court,
Yeah.
because we had serious trip and falls, especially when I was in New Haven. And we actually got more money to fix sidewalks, to do repairs later, because it was decided, we're doing all these payouts to trip and falls. Why don't we just fix sidewalks?
Right. Our numbers were not big. I was shocked.
You're just lucky you don't.
Really, people don't walk now.
No, they don't sue. It's not that they don't fall, they don't sue.
Well, and even insurance companies, the municipality gets their attention when there's lots of trip and fall claims.
Yeah.
Insurance companies do too.
Well, they don't trip and fall in cases because they walk in the street.
Right, because it's too dangerous.
Because it's too dangerous to walk on the sidewalk.
So, all right, I have a sense of where we are with that.
Hmm.
Oh, can I get to keep this forever?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So I just wonder if, you may or may not,
Well, I think we'll get back, I'll get back and say,
yeah.
no chance. Because you'd have to do a fight with the realtors anyway, and it's a small win when you get there.
And then, I mean, it could be as much as a $10,000 or maybe a $12,000 price tag, I don't
Oh, yeah,
know.
it could be bad.
Exactly.
And that can make or break a real estate deal very easily.
Yeah. So, but I would say like, okay, so can we move forward with the sidewalk?
Well, yeah,
Like,
well,
I'd be willing to put in some sweat equity and work on that again,
he doesn't like it when we talk about them. Well, he runs, when's he run?
Next year.
Yeah.
It'll be on, and if we did it next year, then, right, it would be the
Ballot
same
would do.
ballot.
We already punted an entire
Right.
term.
Yeah, no.
We punted an entire term, but could we plan, we might be too late anyway. I'm forgetting the
Right,
timeline, but
it's
it was
right.
like a year
It's
or
a long
something.
timeline.
It might be something that we, get
Look
out,
at the
getting all the ducks in the
2024.
row for the following year. And
Yeah,
if
okay.
he doesn't win, then we gotta work on the next mayor, I don't know.
Okay, I know where we are.
Question Wilson for mayor.
No.
Yeah,
I apologize, I have a
No, no,
hard
we're done.
stop at 5:30.
yeah, we're done.
I did want to
We're done.
provide a quick update,
Oh, go
if I
ahead.
may.
Yeah, yeah,
with the
absolutely.
Chair's permission.
Yeah. totally.
The Ulster County Transportation Council will be starting a railroad safety study. We have a contractor under contract, it's WSP.
Is it quiet zone?
We already did the quiet zone study, it's longitude,
Mm-hmm.
they're at least 14 years old. We will be updating and reevaluating the original quiet zone study.
not quiet.
But we did the study, it never got implemented. And there are complications, particularly the Foxhall intersection. Is the engineer at the time, I don't remember who it was, said that they don't think they could pull it off from an engineering standpoint, given the geometry of the intersection and several other issues. This study will address trespass, pedestrian trespass onto the railway corridor and how that can be prevented. The significant deaths are due to trespass. So it may be intentional deaths, but nonetheless prohibit or inhibit the amount of trespass onto the corridor. It would hopefully decrease the fatality rates. Looking at every crossing and how they can be improved from a pedestrian and cyclist safety standpoint, revalidating the quiet zone conclusions. And also part of the quiet zone, to get a quiet zone, if you have fewer crossings, you can get one step closer to having establishing a quiet zone. CSX is certainly in favor of closing public crossings. So if we were to close one, maybe two public crossings, how would that impact traffic? That would be another focus. So David Stoss is the project manager. So you can expect to see some public outreach for that.
What's the project limits?
City of Kingston, 6 at-grade crossings.
WSPs. Good.
I saw that, I think Citizens of Ulster were also bringing up the noise. I saw that.
Yes, on the town of
Yeah.
Ulster, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And our original study actually went out to the town of Ulster for the quiet zone. I think, and I'd have to revisit this 2006 study before my time, very detailed report about that thing. I think out of Lake and Trine, it might be easier to impose a quiet zone. There are engineering standards that need to be met. But their intersections are much more straightforward.
The question I have, does this look at, and I know you have to go, does this look at like desire paths or whatever that aren't even sort of official?
We're gonna be doing very comprehensive.
Okay, 'cause I know one I've used, it's just a
That's
sort of path through the grass that people are going, and you know, that sort of
So
stuff.
before you go, 9W study, I know it's beyond city limits, but there is a 9W study?
It's very much underway. We're under contract with CNE, Great Manning, to do a study of the 9W corridor in the town of Ulster from Aldi's north to Lakes Knowles Road. Those are signal boundaries, and those are rough boundaries. We'll look at traffic conditions outside of that. It's a highly detailed corridor management plan. We're looking at all elements of the roadway. We have to address some congestion issues at 199 and 9W as part of the congestion management process, but we're looking at the corridor soup to nuts. Particularly pedestrian accessibility, safety, we'll do crash analysis.
That's fantastic.
That's good.
That, there'll be significant public outreach for that.
Yeah.
So we don't even have, I've been getting a fair amount of criticism from members of the public, because they feel like we're doing this project behind closed doors. We haven't even started the project.
Yeah,
I mean, we've done our counts.
Yeah.
But I don't even have the public engagement plan approved yet.
Yeah.
So.
So it's coming still.
I'm not ready to engage with the public at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you for
everyone.
coming.
Enjoy the
Yeah.
weekend.
Bye.
Sorry, I have to go. Right?
No, it's good.
You as well.
Bob,
All right, I think, yeah,
can I propose line for next meeting?
sure,
I'd like to do a report on the Butte Road Hero Transportation Education.
good, that would be
Campaign.
very good.
Do you have stuff to report about your counts of pedestrians and bikers yet?
I have my data, it's still raw data, and I am not a data visualizer, so I'm gonna say, there is not a clear story in the data. Someone with maybe better skill than I could might be able to pull them out, but I'd like to, I just haven't spent the time with it to do it. So I have it when we have the ability to do it.
Do you think David Stoss would be able to help out with that, maybe?
Maybe.
Because he's
I can-
kind of a
I can
data guy.
definitely ask, yeah.
Would you put the data in like Excel?
It's an Excel, yeah. And I used templates that from other transport, it's a template that's used in other like ped counts, so it's.
You sent it to me, I think I looked at it,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's sort of the same thing, I looked at it very briefly.
Yeah,
But I felt like there might be some stories at
can
certain
be
intersections.
pulled out.
Yeah, like, there could be some more analysis, but maybe like David or Brian,
yeah.
were like more traffic analysis, like.
So basically, I have like a summary, and I can tell you that there's more bikes going down Broadway slightly every year. But the I'm not good enough to go like show the movements and show like, oh,
Okay.
this intersection is doing a lot of left turns. Like I can't quite pull that out.
It's hard to do in Excel anyway.
Yeah. But maybe Dave Stoss might have those skills for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good. Any of the last minute things before we?
Well, I can give you a sneak preview of, and I think it's almost worth it because I was so excited about it. So I'm gonna give you a sneak preview. So for the Road Hero, these just got printed. These are, like, you're talking about education.
Oh, yeah, for the bike
Please.
lane, and the people are parking.
So, I don't think one of these has been sent out, like been used yet, but I'm just so excited that this
I'm gonna just
is.
go out and start using them right now.
But
we will
these,
just stick them on ourselves.
Yeah, I want to,
I'm just
I
kidding.
want a bumper sticker.
I-
so just turn it
I'm just
on,
kidding.
Slap on the
Slap it
driver's
right on,
license.
like a towing, like you've been
Yeah.
booted or whatever, you can't go.
Oh, I like that.
so these have been delivered to the police department. The chief is away this week. He's coming back Monday, but I hope that it'll roll out next week, along with another social media campaign that's gonna be on the police department's Facebook page.
Oh, good.
So that's kind of a new development since the last time we talked about it. So next month, I'll try to have a full report with
Excellent.
analytic numbers and stuff, but this is really exciting.
Yeah, no, I mean, cause I see this so often.
It's so funny, so many people are like, is it really a problem? It's like, I'm sensitive to it. Every time I drive down Broadway, I see every
Oh.
car that's in the buffer
In
zone
the-
or
yeah,
worse. and I get mad.
There's a food trailer parked in the buffer.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when I ride my bike down, and I do, not, frequently, somewhat frequently, and I see somebody parked in there or standing, that's what makes me crazy.
Yes.
They don't park, they'll stand there, they'll sit there with their
Yes,
car.
or in the
bike
bus
lane.
zone.
In the buffer,
In the
yeah.
bike lanes, in the buffer. There's a food trailer,
This is great.
no
This
vehicle
is
attached.
really cool.
In the bike lane,
And
In
I
the
try to
buffer.
tell
Well-
people, don't
in the
do it.
buffer.
Yeah.
And
Okay, I
an
know
extension
that is
cord
okay.
across the bike.
And they tell me,
Yeah.
well, you're not, I guess it doesn't matter.
Right, we move,
Um,
it's dangerous, you don't know, it could be a crazy person.
Any other announcements? Otherwise, I'll formally end our
No, no other
streaming.
announcement, I think we're good. We'll meet again, we'll do this again. Exciting.
Thanks, everyone.